I invite you to now just gently close your eyes or find a spot just to soften your gaze. Maybe plant your feet flat on the floor and just allow your body to begin to relax into this time of meditation. Connecting to the breath as you just allow it to flow naturally. No force, no automatic or no manual movements. Just allow it to just flow naturally in its natural state. And let's begin to ponder the words for just a moment. The words of be happy and be free. What do those words truly mean to you? Be happy, be free. What do they feel like? What do they look like? Perhaps what emotions do the words be happy and be free stir up within you? Maybe you are currently experiencing what it's like to be happy and to be free. Maybe you feel as if you have something in your life right now that is preventing you from being happy and being free. Wherever you find yourself in this moment, just allow yourself during this time together today to just envision what it would truly be like to be happy and to be free in your life. What it would feel like to be happy and to be free in your life. And as we prepare to enter into our time together today of silence, I invite you just allow yourself to see this and to feel this happening. To be happy and to be free as we enter into our moment together of silence. as you begin to bring your awareness back to this time and this place, I just invite you to know that happiness and freedom, these are what the universe wants for you. This is what the God within wants for you. These things are your true nature. Happiness and freedom, these are who you are. These are truth. They are always found within, that place within. I invite you to just carry these things with you this week as we enter into this Thanksgiving week together. It's another thing to be grateful for. And we breathe in this moment and we know, and so it is. Namaste. And let's celebrate this freedom and this happiness as we sing together a new Lord's Prayer. Talent with us here on our Sunday morning. I will also have everybody know that Kay does more than just that. She actually writes really well too, because I was recently taking this online class through Madison Technical College. It was a creative writing class, and my instructor shared a piece of writing from none other than Kay Frazier. So immediately I had to email Kay. I was like, "Is this you?" And she's like, "That was me." So anyway, she writes really well too. So anyway, thank you, Kay. It's nice to have your music to enjoy this morning. So today is our last Sunday of welcoming the unwelcome. And I'm kind of having to welcome the unwelcome because I don't know if I welcome it being our last Sunday of this book. It's been so good. So anyway, but next Sunday is our official start of Advent. So this takes us directly into Advent, already the start of almost the holiday season. So time has really flown this year. But so anyway, Pema starts off, she just starts right into it this week in chapter 17. And she says, we can't have an enlightened society or a sane and peaceful world if the individuals within it are stuck in a small fixed mind. Out of our individual ability to connect with a big mind and big heart, in other words, with our basic goodness, we can manifest a culture where people care for themselves and care for each other. Now she goes on to say how this is a work in progress. And thinking about writing, this actually made me think about the art of writing. I can finish a piece. I can be writing a piece and I can finish it and I can think, that's pretty good. This piece is good to go. I can shoot it off and hey, be good, and I'll have to worry about it again. But then I'll go back to it the next day and I'll look at it and I'll see things that I want to fix. I'll look at it, I'll be like, I really could have used a different word here, or maybe this sentence could be rearranged or maybe taken out. Just I find those things where there's redundant words, just whatever it is. And then I'll just be like, okay, now it's good to go again. And then I'll just start the whole process over. Look back at it again. Oh, this needs to be fixed. This needs to be fixed. Again, finding things that I want to change. So I finally just had to make an agreement with myself when it comes to my writing, and that is that I don't keep looking at it over and over again. Because I know that at the end of the day, it's likely going to always be a work in progress. It might appear to be good, it might appear to be finished, but in reality, there's always something in the writing that someone would change. So is it ever really complete? Now, I know talking about the piece of writing is not quite the same as staying within what is termed here a small mind, but it is in the fact that both are always a work in progress. I know that I'm a work in progress. I'll hit a point in my practice where I'll think, you know what? I really think I've got this stuff down. I haven't had a polarizing thought all day. Well, that might be stretching it. We'll say for an hour. But only to have such an experience, such a thought creep into my mind before I go to bed that night. And I'm thinking, well, there you go. There it is. And it's truly difficult to stay within this place of small mind, which is something that could be perceived as an image of, okay, let me start this over again. I wrote this sentence down because I knew I was going to have difficulty saying it. It truly is difficult to connect with one another in peace if we stay stuck in this small mind, which could be a perceived image of someone we hold in our mind, the fixation of something that someone did in the past and so forth. It can be difficult to make those peaceful and heart-to-heart connections if we stay stuck in small mind. Nancy's sitting out here today. If I'm sitting here thinking, I'm ticked off at Nancy because of what she did a year ago, it's really hard for me to move into that place of having a peaceful mind. And I stay stuck in that small fixed mind when I do that. Now, Pema mentions one way we can move through this by intentionally contacting basic goodness, which is helping us to connect with the unbiased open space that's always available to us. So let's think about this for a moment. Is it even truly real? People really have biased thoughts, but are biased thoughts something that are truly tangible? Or are they merely just a figment or a product of our thoughts and or our perceptions? Now, we're not born biased. Nobody enters this world with a biased mindset. We're born into this unbiased open space. The bias begins to then happen by how we're taught and how we continue to perceive the world as we grow and change. So the goal in practicing that contact with basic goodness is to also see things in perhaps a different way. So let's think back again to my usual rainbows and unicorns scenario. I like to use that, rainbows and unicorns. We see them out in the field on a sunny day. We're just walking along, we look out in the field, and we see these beautiful rainbows and unicorns out in this field. And we start to think, my gosh, that's really beautiful. They're so peaceful. But then a fog starts to roll in. And we're getting to the point to where they're starting to obscure our view of the rainbows and unicorns. Now, our initial pattern is to probably try to ignore the fog and to keep our eyes on the rainbows and unicorns for as long as we can. We want to ignore the thing, which is the fog in this instance, that is starting to block our view. But instead of trying to ignore the fog, we decide for a moment to just appreciate it and to develop this intimacy of sorts with it. Its beauty in and of itself, how the fog is formed, this magical way that it comes together. We could also know that it will eventually dissipate. The fog's not going to last forever. It's going to eventually start to dissipate. And we'll once again be able to have that clear view of those beautiful rainbows and unicorns. Because they never stopped being there. Sure, they were obscured for a moment, but their beauty is still out there once the fog has disappeared. Now, Pema mentions that feelings of something's inherently wrong with me is something akin to the fog that I mentioned. Something that we can also develop an intimacy with. She mentions just closing our eyes and going within, because we all have that thought occasionally. We probably have all, at some time or the other in our lives, thought, something's wrong with me. Maybe I'm not seeing this the way other people do or whatever. But Pema suggests developing an intimacy with that and other such thoughts by just closing our eyes and just going within when we feel those feelings come up, to just make contact with that feeling. She challenges us to ask ourselves two questions when we make that connection. One, does this feeling depend on an internal dialogue, a storyline? And what would it mean for me personally to accept this feeling with kindness? So maybe we find we let that dialogue go and we realize there's just really nothing more to it. It's just an old story that we've held on in our minds, and there's nothing more underneath the surface other than that running dialogue. It was just merely a story we held on for far too long. Maybe we do find that there's still something up underneath the surface, some kind of strong emotion that's still attached to that. We can then ask ourselves that next question. What would it mean for me personally to fully accept this feeling? To not reject it, but to embrace it. Now, Pema previously mentioned to embrace it with kindness. Most of us are just conditioned to avoid those feelings and those emotions that don't make us feel good. We've talked about it before, but we're taught that, anger, for instance, we're taught that anger is bad. It's something that should be avoided. No, you shouldn't feel angry. That's not good. Or sadness. We're taught that to feel sad isn't good and that we need to just pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and just get back out there, and to make ourselves feel good, whatever the case is. What if instead of doing that, however, we just allow ourselves to fully embrace those feelings that are usually associated with a negative connotation, and to do so with kindness. Pema states, place the fearful mind in the cradle of loving kindness. In other words, be friendly to yourself. It really starts to help us to not be so judgmental of ourselves and to be able to grow comfortable with those things that initially may make us feel uncomfortable, to welcome the unwelcome, or at least the things that we think are unwelcome, because maybe sometimes they not always are. And speaking of welcoming the unwelcome, Pema talks about welcoming the unwelcome with laughter. Now, I like this one because anybody that knows me well and probably heard some of my talks know that I enjoy humor and laughter. I'm one of those, I don't ever really tend to take life too seriously. And Pete's over there, like, why would you do that? Why would you take life too seriously? Now, I'm not saying something we perceive as negative happens and we point our fingers and we just laugh at it. I remember doing this as a child. In West Texas, where I grew up, it doesn't necessarily snow so much as it does occasionally get icy. There'll just be these sheets of ice come down and it just causes a mess. But I remember going downtown with my father when I was a child. We'd driven downtown to pick my mother up, and there's these people in these nice business suits out on the sidewalk, and they were falling. And I remember my sister and I just pointing and laughing as these people fell. So that's not the type of funny, although I was laughing at the time, that's not the type of funny that I'm talking about here. Remember last week when we talked about making friends with ego? What if we were to just kind of friendly poke fun at ego a little bit? So imagine this conversation. Ego. Hey there, my friend. You see clouds are gathering outside, right? You. Yeah, what of it? Ego. Well, isn't today the day of your big picnic or your big outdoor event? You. Yeah, so what? Ego. Isn't it likely to rain and ruin everything? So you've got a couple of different choices here. You can say, you know what, you're right, and just begin to just go off on a tirade about how your picnic or your outdoor event is about to be ruined. Or you can say something like Pema mentions in our book. Oh, there you are again, my old familiar friend, neurotic fretting, or whatever name you choose to use for it. But she says that being able to laugh at ourselves connects us with our humanness. So I'll go back to the old saying of laughter really is the best medicine, because it truly is. Walk into a room full of people. You may not even find anything that's funny, but if one person starts laughing, it tends to spread like wildfire. And before long, everybody's laughing and having the best time, and half the time they don't even know what they're laughing at. Maybe I speak from experience on that, but anyway. But I even remember once sitting in a corporate meeting. I looked around the table, and everybody's just so serious in there. And it was over a piece of technical documentation and how we should best word it. And I remember sitting there thinking to myself, I'm like, this is just technical documentation. Nobody is likely to even read it anyhow. And I think the world is going to continue to spin on its axis no matter how we word this technical documentation. And I just started kind of chuckling to myself. Now, I didn't laugh out loud because I probably would have ticked a few people off, but it lightened the situation for me, and it made it a lot less stressful. Now, Pema also mentions learning from our teachers. Now, thank you, Nancy. Nancy was a teacher. But teachers play a big role in helping to shape who they are, or who we are, don't they? I don't know where I'd be right now without some of the teachers that I have had in my life. Pema says this about teachers. She said, authentic teachers show us what it actually looks like to go beyond fixed mind and to exist without polarizing, to live joyfully in a state of groundlessness. They may still have further to go on their own paths, but they have gone far in letting go of their false Samaric comforts and in overcoming their habitual patterns and reactions. She then mentions, as we all know, but sometimes forget, the company we keep is very important. So we've likely all had a mix of friends and even family where some are wonderful influences and they make us feel really good, and others maybe not quite so much. I'm not telling anybody today to go off and cut any ties with friends or family. That's not what I'm saying today. That's a choice for only you to make, but Pema talks about avoiding negative influences. With some friends, she says, the poisons keep growing. Study, reflection, and meditation weaken, while loving kindness and compassion fall away. She says, give up bad friends. Now, she mentions here that poisons mean evoking emotions. Certain emotions such as anger, jealousy, and obsessive desires, one that she says. And she asks the question, do certain people in your life stir up these kinds of emotions more often than not? Now, I know I had to recently personally separate myself from someone that I've had in my life for a very long time. They begin to refer to me in negative ways due to my political and spiritual beliefs. And I gave this person a specific ringtone on my phone so I would know to prepare myself when I was getting a text from this person. And I got to where I would start to feel this tightness in my chest every time I heard that tone. It was even getting worse to where when I would even read the belittling messages, and I was finally able to just ignore them without engaging in that kind of behavior, or without thinking maybe I could change their mind or say something that was going to force them to treat me better. Now, Evin from 20 years ago likely would have just read the message and gotten a little heated or a little, irritated, and I would have engaged in that behavior. And I would have just grown increasingly angry, and I never probably would have stopped engaging. And it just would have been exhausting. But in the end, that relationship was becoming very toxic and not adding anything positive to my life. So part of what helped me do this was some of the wonderful teachers that I've had along the way. Those teachers helped me to know that A, it was okay to distance myself from people that treat me that way and that make me feel that way. And B, as Pema states, what it actually looks like to go beyond fixed mind, to exist without polarizing, to live joyfully in a state of groundlessness. Now sure, as Pema mentioned, some of these teachers have still had further to walk down their own paths, but we all do. The main thing is that they were able to teach me what I needed to know at that moment. Now the last chapter of our book, chapter 20, it starts with Pema giving the quote of, instead of seeing it as a futile or depressing, we can see the limitlessness of the job ahead of us as a source of continual inspiration. Now, she also mentioned something we've heard more of in this book, and that is the commitment to wake up for the benefit of others. Now, I've had people say to me, but Evin, I'm just one person. How am I able to make a significant change in the world? Well, thinking that you alone are responsible for making significant change in the entire world, that's a pretty big task to fill, isn't it? That's what I would think. What's wrong with just starting out a bit on a smaller scale? We don't have to agree to go tackle the world. We can kind of scale that back just a little bit and start maybe a little bit smaller. What about making changes in the life of just one willing person that's in your life? Maybe in your community. In your core group of people that you interact with on a regular basis. Maybe even within yourself. Now, sometimes I think we put too much pressure on ourselves thinking that we've got to create this massive change on a global level or that we're just not doing anything. But that's not true. This chore aligns itself with the title of the last chapter as in Mission Impossible, to think that we have to go out and change the world or we're not changing anything. There are certainly people who do create global change. But that's really a little bit more the exception rather than the rule. We don't have to be remembered as Jesus or Buddha or Gandhi to make significant change. Now, the very first chapter we discuss in this book mentions bodhicitta, which is the awakening of the heart and the mind. This right here is perhaps one of the largest contributions we can make towards significant change, awakening our own heart and our own mind. And we can commit to this practice by first realizing that we aren't ever really starting from scratch. Every one of us is starting with what Pema states is a glimmer of bodhicitta. We all love something. That is your glimmer. There's something each and every one of us loves. That is your glimmer, that love. Secondly, we make the commitment to protect our bodhicitta. We do so, as Pema states, by protecting it from our own habits. And we do this by becoming aware of some of our tendencies to polarize, some of our tendencies to label, again, them over there rather than just simply us. And I think we've seen enough of this in our own country lately, haven't we? Right here in our own backyard. Third, we do what we can to help nourish it and to help it grow. But this takes effort. It's not something we just sit and passively watch. It actually takes effort on our part. I mean, imagine yourself you're stranded in a desert. And it's been a long time since you've had any water. I mean, you're almost to the point where you're just close to dying of thirst. When suddenly you look up ahead and you see this huge flowing river. It's about a quarter a mile or so ahead of you. Now, you're only going to be able to enjoy that water if you actually make it to the river. And it's going to take work on your part to get there. And if you're dying of thirst, you're likely going to do anything and everything you have to get to that river to take a drink of water. And nourishing our bodhicitta is very similar, at least at first. We must be willing to face our own vulnerabilities. We must be willing to face our own broken heart and know that others experience the same things. Once we make this realization, we're going to begin to see our journey through a different lens. And we begin to desire to help others along the way when we do. And the journey may not always be as difficult as it is in the beginning, though. Like most, it becomes easier along the way the more we practice it. You begin to develop the skills that you need for this as you progress. You help to cultivate optimism in a loving environment, both in your life and the lives of those in which you interact. And this is one in which everyone can begin to feel comfortable, not just a few. Yet you also move out of your comfort zone when the need arises because you know it's the only way in which you not only help make your own contribution, but in which you yourself grow. So to end, I want to read, this is in the very last part of our book, if you have it on page 147, it's the very last paragraph. Pema says, we can be realistic and optimistic at the same time, because ultimately the view of the Dharma is encouraging and life-affirming. The Buddha taught that all beings have the potential to wake up completely, and that all of us will eventually get there. He and many other wise people in this world have given us tools for taking whatever occurs in our lives and using it to cultivate our basic goodness and become more and more able to be there for others. Whatever the future brings, welcome or unwelcome, we can use on our path of awakening. To me, this attitude is the best kind of optimism. As we keep opening up to our potential as bodhisattvas, we will go from having a tiny view of ourselves and our world to discovering a boundless capacity to care for and benefit our fellow living beings. Namaste, everybody, and have a wonderful, happy Thanksgiving. Okay, and now I'm going to, Martin, can you hand Nancy a microphone? Okay. And then I'm going to invite Nancy up. She is our board treasurer, and we had a board meeting this last Wednesday night, so Nancy is going to get everybody up to speed on what we discussed. I give it to you, Nancy.
Thank you. Strange being here with nobody here. So yeah, we did have our board meeting this week, and I think it's a nice connection to what Evin was saying about the Mission Impossible chapter, because Mission Possible is doing what you can do right around you. And so just acknowledging the board and other volunteers and Pete and Martin and Evin and just folks who are doing things to keep this community going and making a difference in this part of our world. Wanted to really thank all of you who have been giving to keep our ministry going. The donations in October were the highest of any month this year and helped narrow the gap for the year between income and expenses. So we're now only about $6,000 away for the year in terms of having that gap between income and expenses. So if our November and December income figures are similar to October, we should be good to to overcome that extra 6,000. So thank you so much for your generosity in your gifts to this ministry. We've had several committees that have been active. The Streams of Income Committee has come up with a list of ideas, largely post-pandemic, for generating additional sources of income beyond donations. These include ideas like advertising to host live stream weddings, hosting pop-up food cart music outside, hosting outside groups that need space, offering co-working space, and then also standardizing costs, really looking at what our policies and procedures would be for people using the space. What are our costs to have folks here? And we're also posting links to order books through Bookshop or making Amazon purchases through Amazon Smile. And in both those cases, you can designate Unity of Madison as your preferred charity. And I believe we've got links at this point, if they're on the website, for doing that. So with the holiday season approaching, if you're doing purchases of books or other items through Amazon or Bookshop, you can do that through Amazon Smile or Bookshop to designate Unity of Madison to get a small percentage. The maintenance team has been gathering information related to past maintenance on the building and working on current needs. As an example of our ongoing needs for donations to keep things going, even if people aren't meeting in person, our hot water tank made its transition last week, sprung a leak and needed replacing, and we discovered the water softener really wasn't functioning well either, so that was adjusted to be functioning again. So we now have a new hot water tank and some adjustments to our water softener. This past Friday, we had gutters and downspouts and roof drains cleared, and we no longer have like little tree seedlings growing up on our roof, which is great. And we had we've had several people up trying to ascertain the source of a leak into our men's bathroom. We've had some roofing person do some sealing around some units up on the roof. We're hoping that dealt with it, and if not, at least we don't have issues with standing water and leaves up there anymore to block what we're seeing. So there may be more we need to do with that, but we've had our door from the sanctuary to the parking lot has been weather stripped. We have a volunteer, Bob Benikoff, who will be doing some replacing of light bulbs and light fixtures, upgrading to more energy efficient lighting. And we've replaced computers and phones because those weren't really working properly, and renegotiated our internet phone service for significant cost savings. So really been very active with things with the physical space of this church, and your donations all help with that. So again, thank you very much. The nominating committee has begun meeting, so now's the time to prayerfully consider whether you're interested in serving on the board. There'll be more information coming on that. Reverend Evin is exploring creative ways to provide some of our annual traditional holiday services, so stay tuned for that. The Growth Committee will begin meeting soon to explore ways to expand our outreach. Policies and Procedures team also plans to meet soon to update policies and procedures. Going back to streams of income, many of those ideas I shared would be post-pandemic, but we're looking at ways to expand offerings virtually beyond our current membership. And your board continues to work well together, and we really do appreciate all the ongoing faith and consistent support we receive from you. So thank you very much, and have a good Thanksgiving.